morning. This is Anna Patterson with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. I'm going to go ahead and kick it off with organizational updates. Just want to give a shout out to the folks that either registered and or participated in our mid-year policy update last week. There will be a recording available for that policy update, but there was great discussion, great questions, and really just appreciate folks showing up. So thank you. Moving to federal updates, Congress is out on August recess, and they will return on September 9th. This week, the Biden-Harris administration announced that they expanded access to housing for veterans, and they announced a set of policy changes that will expand access to the HUD-VASH program, a program that in particular provides supportive housing for veterans. The two policy changes that they announced are, the first, they are going to be requiring public housing agencies that administer HUD-VASH to set the initial income eligibility for veterans at 80% of area median income rather than 50% of area median income. The use of this higher initial income eligibility threshold is currently optional, and so many housing agencies have actually already adopted the higher threshold, but this increase is now being made mandatory by HUD. The second policy change involves excluding veterans' service-connected disability benefits from annual income when determining program eligibility. There are other housing subsidy programs that may also adopt this annual income calculation when also determining program eligibility for veterans. So again, the two policy changes, now the income eligibility threshold must be set at 80% of area median income, AMI, for veterans instead of 50%. And the service-connected disability benefits for veterans must be excluded when determining program eligibility. The National Association of Realtors settlement goes into effect later this week. The buyers and sellers will now be responsible for paying their own agents instead of what has been the traditional structure where the seller pays both. As a result, the home prices are expected to drop a little bit, although it will likely take a lot of time to see how prices are actually effective, especially in specific markets that are more competitive. There is a piece from the Raleigh News and Observer about how they're anticipating that the new rules will change how North Carolinians buy and sell homes. Moving to state and local updates, in the town of Waynesville, they are considering a zoning change that would allow for manufactured homes to be placed as accessory units on some lots in some neighborhoods. Some of the town officials are saying that the change would help expand the supply of affordable housing, and so they are holding a public hearing scheduled for next Monday, August 19th, to discuss. The City of Hendersonville is partnering with the UNC School of Government's Development Finance Initiative to identify potential sites for affordable housing. They are planning to adopt a strategic housing plan by next May that includes action steps as well as possible sites for housing and policies to support the development of said housing. It was great meeting some folks from Hendersonville last week on Friday at the Western North Carolina Regional Housing Forum. So excited to see how this housing plan turns out. The Department of Housing and Urban Development recently awarded the Lumbee Tribe of North Carolina with a $4.6 million Indian Housing Block Grant Competitive Award. These funds are going to go towards building an additional 20 housing units for older adults at the Pine Needles Elder Village project in Roland. Further east, 184 workforce housing units are set for Wilmington for a 100% affordable housing development called Avenue Flats that will serve over 184 households earning between 30 and 80% of the area median income. The developer is the Blue Ridge Atlantic Group, and they're partnering with the Wilmington Housing Authority. Both 4% and 9% low-income housing tax credit, or LIHTC, credits will be expected to be announced later this month. So those awards, we'll find out more this month. The city, in particular, has adopted a text amendment. It adopted this amendment in 2022 that allows for 100% affordable housing developments with affordability periods of at least 15 years to receive conditional rezoning under a bubble plan. So since affordable housing projects such as this are reliant on not yet secured funding, such as a tax credit award, a bubble plan allows for the rezoning without all of the final pieces in order. For example, depending on the final financing for Avenue Flats, the density will actually be able to range from 28 to 36 dwellings per acre. So this is a really good example of how local government can use their zoning and land use abilities creatively to support the development of affordable housing. Also in Bloomington, a permanent supportive housing apartment community was actually almost lost to market rate housing at the end of their 15-year period of mandated affordability. However, our friends over at the Cape Fear Collective received a $700,000 forgivable loan from the city of Bloomington's affordable housing program to rehab the units and preserve them for their affordability. And they reopened earlier this summer in partnership with the Good Shepherd Center, who is providing on-case site management. So again, another great example of the role of partnerships, the role of local government, and how important it is to not only develop supply, but also to preserve it. Moving to events, we have several great events coming up. There is a webinar happening tomorrow, hosted by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, titled Our Places of Impact, Building Trust with Communities and Local Government. That webinar will be happening from 1 to 2 p.m. Also starting this week, and you have to register by tomorrow, the Federal Reserve Banks of St. Louis and Chicago will be hosting a series called Unlocking Housing Opportunities for America's Workforce. On the 15th, which will be Thursday, from 2 to 3:15 p.m., they'll talk about understanding the need for workforce housing. Next Thursday, from 2 to 3:15 p.m., there will be a webinar on the partnerships that help advance workforce housing. And then another nod to preservation the following week on August 29th, from 2 to 3:15 p.m., they'll be talking about housing preservation and why it matters. Also happening on the 22nd from 12 to 1 p.m. So again, opportunity to stack your day with some great learning. The Center for Community Progress is hosting a webinar about how land banks in small communities can grow trust and impact. Highly, highly recommend learning more about the land bank model and evaluating whether it might be right for you. Of course, our affordable housing conference that we're hosting with our partners at the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency and Centrant will be happening on September 5th through the 6th at the Raleigh Convention Center. And our friends at NC1, the Women in Affordable Housing Network, are hosting their second annual luncheon right after the conference on September 6th from 1 to 2:30 p.m. at the GD Space in downtown Raleigh. It is $25, and the link to register will be in the call notes. Moving to a few reports and resources and things we want to point out to you. The Part 2 Annual Estimates of Homelessness in the U.S. has been released by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. If you remember, Part 1 has already been released. Part 1 actually provides the point-in-time estimates of people experiencing homelessness on a single night. But Part 2 expands on this by giving estimates of people experiencing sheltered homelessness that are using rapid rehousing subsidies or living in permanent supportive housing at any point over the course of the year. So it gives us a broader picture about who is accessing these services and programs and the general patterns of use. There are a few key points I just want to lift up. The findings in Part 2 show that there has been growth in the number of older Americans experiencing homelessness. This has continued. This has been a constant trend. There has also been growth in the Hispanic, Latinx population experiencing sheltered homelessness. And Black, Indigenous, and people of color continue to be overrepresented in these numbers of folks experiencing sheltered and unsheltered homelessness. And the use of rapid rehousing subsidies by adult-only households continues to grow. There is also a recent blog post from the Coates Cannons North Carolina Local Government Law blog on grants passed and the local government authority and the constitutionality of laws against camping or sleeping in public. With the decision of the Supreme Court at the end of June, highly recommend you all are reading this post and kind of diving into what it might mean for your community. that's all we have for today. We have a few other pieces in the news that I welcome you all to check out. All of those events and links to the reports and webinars that I highlighted are going to be in the call notes, so you'll be able to check them out. And we'll talk to you next time. Don't forget, if you need anything or if you want us to talk about anything in particular, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll see you next week.